Horizon Forbidden West is a really good game, but it's not a great game. If you're looking for the game that turns the open world genre on its head, then this is not it. Horizon 2 comes so close to being a memorable epic that it's all the more frustrating when it misses the mark in some crucial areas, but we'll get into that as we go. This review will be spoiler free. Leave a like, or if you prefer just an angry comment, it's all the same to me. The first part of this game is so boring that you'll feel like you're back at school, and I suspect Guerilla Games will lose half of its audience during the first 10 hours. There's a lot of preamble, and dare I say it, fucking about, as the game's narrative and systems are slowly introduced. It isn't until you actually travel to the titular Forbidden West that the story starts to get going. And if I hadn't been planning on making this video, I think I would have bounced off this one before it got the chance to get good. And don't get me wrong, it does get good, eventually. Still, I don't really understand why Guerrilla have opted for this slow crawl of a start. Do you remember the opening to Mass Effect 2? Of course you do. It was amazing. It slaps its meat and potatoes straight on the table with a fiery spaceship crash and ends with your main character getting blasted into space and dying. Spoilers for Mass Effect 2, I guess. But how intriguing. What the fuck's gonna happen next? Your guy just died. You want to play more of this game. Horizon is the exact opposite. And it's not even like it's a clever, slow burn with some interesting stuff being set up. It's more just wandering around and talking to the supporting cast. Now, if you're lucky enough to remember any of these supporting characters from the first game, then you might have a tactical advantage when it comes to enjoying this introduction. But something tells me you're not really going to remember any of them, because they're about as interesting as a tin of beans. There is no depth here, and for a game that puts its story at the front and centre, it's a real kick in the balls to have such one-dimensional characters that just kind of follow you around. It's like the writers knew you were supposed to have supporting characters, but they didn't have any idea what to do with them. Most of their dialogue tends to just boil down to, oh, you better watch out for old Aloy, she's so feisty and headstrong, she's gonna get you. Speaking of Aloy, I didn't find her particularly likeable at first, or in the middle of the game, or at the end of it. She's burdened with purpose and just kind of seems pissed off with people most of the time.
Somehow I doubt that.
The voice actor's performance kind of reminds me of Nebula from Guardians of the Galaxy.
We're not the only ones in 2014 looking for the stones.
I'm running out of time. Elizabeth.
My father, my sister, and me.
All because of a terraforming system that's spiraling out of control.
And I don't mean that in a bad way, I think the voice acting is pretty good, but the script rarely gives her anything to say other than just very directly describing her objectives. There are some glimmers of a human being in there on a very rare occasion, but in most instances, Aloy's just a big, ginger, exposition dump so the player knows what they're supposed to be doing. Now, some of the more astute of you might have surmised that I don't think much of the characters, but the story for the most part is pretty enjoyable. It's very science fiction-y, so if you don't like that, then you might run into some problems.
We will send the Odyssey and her crew where no one's gone before.
Some of the side quests are okay, but none of them blew my mind. They're just fine. Luckily, if you choose to, you can just beeline the main story and ignore all the side quests, something I found myself doing more and more as the game progressed and the side quest fatigue started to set in. With all the different factions in this world, there was an opportunity for guild-style quests you might find in an Elder Scrolls game.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
Doing quests for factions and rising up the ranks could have provided the side quests with a bit more substance, but unfortunately, it just tends to boil down to bump into someone who has a problem, solve their problem by killing something or climbing something, and then leave forever. It's not terrible, but it does feel like a bit of a missed opportunity.
Annie, where are you? Finishing this the hard way.
The combat is a particularly strong area of Horizon Forbidden West. It might even be the best bit. There is a plethora of options for taking down machines, and there's even some human-on-human action.
Okay.
At the centre of the combat system there's a customizable weapon wheel, and some of your secondary abilities are mapped to the D-pad. It's very intuitive, and despite the vast amount of options you have, it's pretty easy to get the hang of. There are various elemental effects that can be attached to your attacks, and different enemies are weak to different elements, adding yet another layer to this system. It's very refreshing to see such a refined combat system in an open world game, and there's even a stealthy option, which generally works pretty well. Having said that, and I'm not sure if anyone else feels this way, but I don't love killing robots in games. I want to hear the bones crunch, I want to see the blood splatter. It's one of the reasons I didn't like the more recent Gears of War games. These machines don't have families to go back to. I want to know I've ended a life. Maybe I should save this for my therapist. You don't become over-encumbered when picking stuff up. Rather, there's a limit to how much of certain items you can carry. If you pick something up and you already have the maximum amount of that thing, it gets sent to your stash, which you can access at major cities and other checkpoints. While this system is very approachable, it did lead me to not really giving a fuck what I was picking up. You also have to hold down the button to loot each individual body or chest, which would have been fine if you were picking and choosing what you were taking with you, But with no limit to what you can carry, you just end up taking everything, and you'll often have to go through the looting animation 20 or so times after a fight. It's just arduous and unnecessary. You also rarely loot new weapons or armour, it's just the things required to upgrade your weapons and armour at the shops or workbenches. As such, you seldom get to experience the thrill of finding a new armour piece that has better or more desirable stats. It's fine once you get used to it, and you'll even find yourself hunting down specific machines in specific ways, something that's entirely unique and a credit to this game. Aside from that, it's a pretty business as usual open world. The crafting, the looting, the gear are all done pretty well. But in an oversaturated market, you won't find yourself doing anything you haven't done in open world games before. Something that really is pushing the envelope is the graphics.
No hunters to kill them? The snow brought the chill.
I encountered a few bugs and a bit of pop-in here and there, but none of that detracted from how amazing this game really looks. This game might even be worth picking up just so you can see what your PlayStation 5 can actually do. A compressed YouTube video does not do it justice. Like most modern games, there's a performance mode that favours frame rate and a quality mode that focuses on fidelity. Now normally I go for performance mode, no questions, and Forbidden West is no exception to this. The quality mode is noticeably better, particularly when it comes to rendering objects and scenery in the distance. The problems come when you start moving. 30 frames per second just makes everything stuttery and takes the shine off the overall visual experience. I guess I'm just used to 60 frames per second in games now. 30 frames just looks weird to me. The graphics here really are one of the things that's going to keep you playing, but if you're someone who doesn't particularly care about that sort of thing, then it's just one more reason you might not see this one through to the end.
Data corrupt. Playback stopped.
Overall, I would recommend Horizon Forbidden West. The graphics alone are a reason to check this out, and if you've not played the first one, you will need to check out a story summary on YouTube, or you might be a bit lost. But the story and the unique combat make this a truly fun experience if you're able to get through the absolute slog of an intro. Unfortunately, this is just another open world game. It borrows mechanics from various other titles in the genre, while throwing in some of its own. But overall, it's not doing anything you haven't seen before. This, coupled with sloppy character writing, leads to a slightly forgettable experience. I have had fun playing Horizon and I do recommend it, but in a year or so, maybe when there's a video game drought, when I'm looking through some old titles to replay, I just can't see this one making the cut.